The events unfold in Los Angeles in 1939. Private detective Philip Marlowe meets with wealthy woman Claire Cavendish, the daughter of an oil magnate. Claire wants to make sure that all investigations are done privately because the matter is sensitive. The issue at hand is that Claire's lover, Nico Peterson, has gone missing some time ago. Claire is married, but her husband is more interested in alcohol and Claire's money. Nico, on the other hand, works in the film industry. He and Claire usually met at the Corbata Club. One day Nico simply didn't show up for their meeting. Claire called him several times, but in vain. Nico wasn't at home either. Claire has no idea what happened to her lover and wants the detective to get to the bottom of it. Marlowe first went to Nico Peterson's house. It seems that nobody has been here for quite some time, and Nico's neighbor confirmed this. The guy has been absent for 7 weeks. According to the neighbor, Nico dated many women and often got into trouble. From his police colleagues, Marlowe learned that Nico was wanted for parking fines and other violations. Since his dossier didn't mention that he had a home, the police didn't look for him there. Today it turned out that Nico, being heavily intoxicated, was hit by a car near the Corbata Club and perished. The perpetrator escaped. Corbata is an elite closed establishment, so outsiders are not allowed in. Marlowe intended to speak with the club manager, but the gardeners, who turned out to be thugs, didn't let him in. This led to a fight. Marlowe's police colleague, Joe Green, believes that Nico is not worth their time. He was a regular drunk and a slacker. Marlowe was going to inform Claire about her lover's demise, but their conversation was interrupted by Richard Cavendish, Claire's husband. She introduced Philip Marlowe as a special person looking for things. Supposedly the day before, Claire lost her necklace, and Marlowe found it. Richard didn't believe this but left them nonetheless. Marlowe asked Claire to tell him more about her relationship with Nico Peterson. Claire recounted that she first saw Nico at the Corbata Club and found him attractive. Since then, the two had an affair. They also crossed paths in Mexico, where Nico traveled for business. Claire is convinced that Nico's demise was staged because she recently saw him on the streets of Tijuana. He was known there as a collector of cheap artworks. Claire assumed it was for a movie. Marlowe considered this to be nonsense and stated he wasn't going to continue the investigation. As he left, he met Dorothy Quincannon, Claire's mother. From Dorothy, Marlowe learned that Richard had already made inquiries about him. Many years ago, Marlowe was in the war, then worked for the prosecutor, but lost a good position due to alcoholism. After that, Marlowe started a career as a private detective. Dorothy asked Marlowe why he was here and what he talked about with Claire. Marlowe refused to answer that question. Afterwards, Marlowe arrived at the cemetery, where he noticed a young woman near the container containing the ashes of alleged Nico Peterson, who was cremated. Seeing the stranger, the woman hurried away. Marlowe followed her, but she managed to escape. Marlowe informed his police colleague that Nico Peterson is actually alive, so an investigation should begin to find out who the person identified as Nico Peterson really was and what happened to him. The difficulty is that the person was cremated, so the police won't even be able to identify him by dental records. Joe Green was skeptical of Marlowe's theory because Nico's wallet was found in the pocket of that person. Several people from the club and his sister identified him. Although it was against the rules, Floyd Hansen, the manager of the Corbata Club, agreed to let the private detective in and have a conversation. Floyd was one of those who identified Nico on the road. By the way, Nico was not a member of the club, just a guest of Claire Cavendish. Only selected individuals can become members of the club. When Marlowe mentioned the possibility that Nico might actually be alive, Floyd didn't believe it but advised the detective to talk to Nico's sister, who also participated in the identification. They all recognized Nico despite numerous injuries. Nico's sister, Lynn Peterson, was currently at the Corbata. She and Marlowe agreed to meet later at the Cabana nightclub because it's unsafe to talk here. At night, at the agreed-upon time, Marlowe arrived at the Cabana Club, where one could get entertainment of any kind for money. Instead of Lynn, Marlowe was met by 2 Mexicans who attacked him. However, Marlowe managed to fend them off. The next day, the secretary informed Marlowe that Dorothy Quincannon had arranged a meeting for him at the hotel restaurant. Marlowe attended the meeting. Dorothy used to act in Hollywood movies, which was improper for a woman of her position. But Dorothy didn't care about others' opinions. She already knew that Marlowe was hired by her daughter to find Nico Peterson. Dorothy also had the pleasure of conversing with Nico, who tried to convince her to invest in the horse business. But Dorothy was not interested in that. Now Dorothy is a wealthy widow. Her husband, an oil magnate, perished before Claire was born, leaving all his estate to the wife. It turns out that Dorothy had already hired another private detective to find Nico. It was discovered that besides working as a props manager on the set, Nico was also allegedly an agent for a client named Amanda Toxteth. Apparently Nico had many women he was having an affair with. Dorothy wants to find Nico and offers Marlowe money, but he refused because he's already working for Claire. Marlowe visited the film set. Amanda Toxteth is starring in an action movie. During the break, Marlowe talked to her and asked about Nico. Amanda confirmed that Nico was her agent, who looked for roles for her in movies. The last time Amanda saw Nico was a week before his demise. Amanda described Nico as cold and inclined to all sorts of vices. There were rumors that he was involved in illegal business in Mexico. Marlowe got his first leads. He broke into Nico's house and looked around. Nico's sister Lynn came, still insisting she saw his body in the morgue. Suddenly 2 Mexicans appeared at Nico's doorstep. Marlowe lied that he was trying to rent the house, but of course they didn't believe him. One of the men asked where Serena was. After these words, a fight broke out. Lynn ran away, but one of the Mexicans caught her. Marlowe aimed his gun at him, demanding to answer who Serena was. However, the forces were not equal. Marlowe was knocked out, and Lynn ran again but couldn't get far. Upon waking up, Marlowe found himself facing a sturdy African-American man who introduced himself as Cedric. His boss, Lou Hendricks, sent Cedric here for Marlowe. Soon Marlowe had the opportunity to personally meet Lou Hendricks, who runs an illegal business. Lou ordered his driver Cedric to take Marlowe home. Lou also got into the car. It turned out that Serena is somehow connected to Nico. Lou was after Nico Peterson, and those Mexicans were after Serena. The thing is, Nico used to work for Lou, but then he wanted more. That's why Nico staged his own death. Of course Nico couldn't have done it alone. There's a possibility that members of the Corbata Club were in cahoots with him. The question is, what were their interests? Lou hopes that Marlowe will find Nico after all. Either way, Lou finds out about it and immediately comes for Nico, and then Marlowe better not stand in his way. Marlowe told Joe everything that happened. Lynn Peterson was presumably kidnapped. Joe promised to do everything possible to find Lynn. To cover his bases, Marlowe met with his old acquaintance, Detective Bernie Oles. Marlowe feels guilty for not being able to save Lynn from those Mexicans, so he turns to Bernie for help. Claire Cavendish came to see Marlowe under the pretext of inquiring about the progress of the investigation, but in reality Claire is here for another reason. She started openly flirting with Marlowe, hinting that she wouldn't mind crossing the line. However, Marlowe made it clear that their relationship would strictly remain professional. Of course Claire, accustomed to getting any man she wants, was disappointed. Marlowe decided to follow Claire, who went home. Marlowe peeked at her and her mother's lover, the ambassador from England, through the window. Dorothy noticed Marlowe, but she wasn't at all angered by the fact that he intruded on private property. The next day, Marlowe met with Bernie Oles again, who reported that Lynn Peterson was found lifeless in the river. Marlowe was shocked by this news. The detectives arrived at the scene of the body's discovery. Apparently before her demise, Lynn endured a real nightmare. The police want Marlowe to deal with the mayhem going on at the Corbata Club. The police are not authorized to search the elite establishment, so Marlowe will have to act alone. Marlowe sneaked into the Corbata through the backyard. Dorothy, being a member of the club, was here, as well as Lou. Marlowe entered Floyd's office, implying that he knew despicable and unlawful things were happening in this place. Offering Marlowe a drink, Floyd explained that he's not the one in charge here. Many wealthy, influential members of society are willing to pay huge sums for anonymity to fulfill their most base desires. Essentially, the Corbata Club is a brothel. Feeling unwell, Marlowe realized too late that Floyd had spiked his drink with something. Before Marlowe lost consciousness, Floyd told him that nobody cares where Nico Peterson is right now. All they care about is what Nico has with him. After these words, Floyd let in the 2 Mexicans who dragged Marlowe through the club. It seems that club members have no restrictions or prohibitions on their desires. Clearly, there had recently been a shootout here. Marlowe was locked in some room. When he woke up, he found Cedric chained nearby. According to him, those people grabbed Lou Hendricks. After neutralizing the Mexican guarding them, Marlowe freed Cedric, and they escaped together. Meanwhile, Floyd poured water on Lou, forcing him to regain consciousness. Finding weapons, Marlowe and Cedric devised a plan of action, which was to get out of here alive. Floyd demanded Lou to tell him where Serena was. Lou shouted that it's not Serena but Serena, and it's a plaster decorative mermaid in the aquarium. Marlowe and Cedric burst in, injuring Floyd. A shootout ensued. Unfortunately, the plaster mermaid broke from the shot. Lou shouted to Cedric that he would now not pay for the rest of his life. Cedric took the life of his own boss. It seems everything ended well for Marlowe and Cedric. They told the police what happened. All this time, the plaster mermaid filled with Mexican powder was hidden in the Corbata Club. Marlowe and Cedric decided to stick together for the time being. Marlowe returned home and was not surprised when Nico Peterson visited him, safe and sound. He has dirt on the ambassador, which he wants to pass to Claire. Marlowe demanded him to answer whose body was on the road. Nico replied that it was a musician from Corbata, who looked very much like him. Nico assured that he was not involved in the demise of that guy. Also, he still doesn't know what Dorothy Quincannon wants from him. Before leaving, Nico said he would wait for Claire at the prop room in the evening. Marlowe met Claire and Dorothy together at a restaurant. Marlowe revealed to them that Nico Peterson betrayed them for a plaster mermaid. Claire gloated that her mother's lover, the English ambassador, dumped her. Dorothy responded insult to insult, and Claire, throwing all the dishes off the table, walked out. Marlowe followed her and informed her that he found Nico Peterson. Or rather, Nico found him. When Marlowe told Claire that Nico would be waiting for her in the prop room, she hailed a taxi and left. Marlowe wondered why Nico arranged to meet in the prop room specifically. Cedric explained that Nico has been running Lou Hendrick's product through the prop room for a long time. From the beginning, it was never about the mermaid, but about the contents of a certain briefcase that could ruin the entire studio. Finally, Claire and Nico met. She never doubted he was alive. Nico handed Claire the briefcase, which would ruin the reputation of the English ambassador. The briefcase contained records of all of Lou's deals involving substances from Mexico. It was Nico who was Lou's accountant. When Nico noticed Marlowe, he realized Claire had betrayed him. Pulling out a gun, Claire fired, taking Nico's life. She also burned all the papers from the briefcase. Claire did this because Nico was blackmailing the ambassador, a powerful patron of their family. Marlowe realized that all this time Claire had been manipulating him just to get to Nico. But Marlowe isn't about to turn Claire in because he's charmed by her. Firefighters extinguished the burning building. All the secrets will remain here forever. Bernie Oles knows Marlowe too well and understands that something fishy is going on here. Of course, Bernie won't say anything to anyone. After some time, Marlowe met Claire, who became the owner of the film studio. Initially it was a deal. The ambassador promised Claire to buy the film studio for her if she got rid of the blackmailer. By the way, Dorothy is back in the movies again. In gratitude for his cooperation, Claire offered Marlowe to become the head of security. She hinted that the ambassador is also very grateful to him. Marlowe declined, asking Claire to appoint his friend Cedric to the position instead. In the final scene, we see Marlowe and Cedric walking together through the film studio. Marlowe handed the friend his gun. The fun is just beginning.